ancient trees of Mirkwood whispered their secrets to the wind, their branches creaking in the gloom. Eldrinir, the scholar and historian of elven lore, stood still amidst them, a figure carved from time itself. His long silver hair, once a brilliant cascade, now hung in thin strands, brittle with age. Yet his piercing eyes still held the depth of centuries. He had once walked these woods as a young elf, filled with ambition and purpose, but now, standing beneath their shade, he could feel the weight of history pressing against his shoulders. The once vibrant forest had withered, consumed by time and shadow, its green canopy dimmed to a pallid gray. The ruins of what had once been great elven halls stood like ghosts, their beauty all but lost to the ravages of time. The air was thick with a silence that seemed unnatural, as though the trees themselves held their breath. Eldrinir had come here many times over the centuries, each visit reminding him of the ever-encroaching decay of his homeland. As he walked deeper into the forest, the weight of his own existence, a lifetime steeped in ancient lore, pressed upon him. His heart grew heavy with the knowledge that his people had fallen into obscurity, their once immense power and wisdom fading like the last remnants of twilight. Yet it was in this very silence that Eldrinir found the faintest hint of hope, the potential to rediscover that which had been lost. He had heard rumors of a forgotten manuscript, an artifact lost to the ages. With great purpose, he had journeyed here to the deepest reaches of Mirkwood, where even the oldest elves had ceased to tread. And now, at the heart of these ruins, he found it, half buried beneath the roots of an ancient oak tree, its pages yellowed and brittle with age. With trembling hands, Eldrinir unearthed the manuscript, his heart racing. As he unfurled the fragile pages, his eyes fell upon the words written within. It was a history of the last alliance, the great war between the elves, men, and Sauron, long believed to be fully known. Yet, as he read, a growing unease settled in his chest. The manuscript told a different story, one that diverged from the version known to all. It spoke of betrayals, shadows cast within the alliance itself, and secrets buried beneath the weight of time. The alliances of men and elves had not been as pure as they seemed. There were whispers of actions taken in the dark, hidden motives that had never made it into the annals of history. Eldrinir's brow furrowed in confusion. This cannot be, he whispered to himself, his voice echoing in the stillness. The history he had cherished, the very foundation upon which his identity had been built, was now shattered before him. What had been erased, and why? The discovery was both a blessing and a curse. In his hands, he held the key to forgotten truths, yet the weight of these truths seemed too great to bear. He could feel the cold touch of dread creeping up his spine as he thought of what might await if the full extent of these revelations were known. As the sun dipped beneath the horizon, Eldrinir felt the darkness of the forest deepen around him. The shadows seemed to grow longer, stretching toward him as if to consume him. The forest, once his home, now felt like an alien place. The familiar rustling of leaves sounded like distant whispers, secrets too old to be spoken aloud. His pulse quickened, and he gripped the manuscript tightly, as if it were a lifeline to something he had long believed in. History is never as simple as we wish it to be, he muttered softly. He knew that this was only the beginning. Whatever the truth behind the manuscript, it would lead him to a deeper understanding of the past, and perhaps of himself. His thoughts were interrupted by the faintest rustle in the trees. Eldrinir turned sharply, his senses on alert. There was no sound of animal or bird, only the quiet stirrings of something far older, far more dangerous. He knew the feeling well, the presence of something ancient and forgotten, stirring in the dark. With the manuscript still clutched in his hand, Eldrinir stepped back, his heart pounding in his chest. His mind raced with possibilities. What had he just uncovered? What forces had been awakened by the words on these fragile pages? And most importantly, why had these truths been buried in the first place? As the last light of day faded from the sky, Eldrinir felt the weight of centuries of silence and secrecy close in around him. The mysteries of the past were no longer just stories. They were alive, breathing, and reaching out to him. He had discovered a thread that would lead him into a deeper darkness than he had ever known. Eldrinir's breath caught in his throat as the realization settled upon him. This was only the beginning. He turned away from the forest, the manuscript burning in his hand like a fire that would never be extinguished. The answers he sought lay ahead, but so too did the shadows of those who would go to great lengths to ensure these truths remained buried. And thus, with the setting sun casting long shadows upon the land, Eldrinir began his journey, a journey that would take him far beyond the boundaries of Mirkwood, into the heart of a forgotten war, where ancient forces awaited, both old and new. The winds of Mirkwood whispered of the past, but Eldrinir's heart echoed with the unspoken truth. The past had never truly left. It had only been waiting for the right moment to return. The evening sky over Rivendell was veiled in a faint mist, the fading light of the sun casting shadows that seemed to stir with ancient memories. Eldrinir stood alone by the balcony, the cool wind of the mountains whispering through his hair. His thoughts, heavy with the weight of the discoveries he had made, drifted to a name that had plagued his mind since the moment the shard of the Palantir had touched his hands. Azrather. The name echoed in his thoughts like a bell tolling from the past, resonating with a cold dread. An ancient elf, once thought defeated in the last alliance, had never truly fallen. Instead, Azrather had been bound by the very powers of darkness. His life, twisted by a pact with Morgoth, the dark god who had shaped the world in shadow. Eldrinir could not shake the feeling that the very air around him was thickening, as if the darkness of Azrathar's resurrection was pressing upon the land. "What does this mean?" Eldrinir muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. The ancient elf's return would not just signal the rise of an individual enemy. It was a harbinger of doom, an awakening of the forces that had once sought to shroud Middle-earth in shadow. The Palantir Shard had shown him visions of a battle forgotten by time. A battle where men and elves had fought side by side against the encroaching darkness. And yet, within that alliance, a treacherous act had festered in secret. Azrathar's influence. It cannot be overstated, Eldrinir continued, pacing back and forth, the stone of the balcony cool beneath his feet. He had known peace in his long life, but he had never felt so unsettled, so helpless in the face of something this old, this malevolent. The balance of power in Middle-earth had always teetered on the edge of ruin. But now he feared that the destruction of the past was rising again. Eldrinir turned sharply as a figure approached through the mist, a familiar, yet unwelcome presence. It was Lord Elrond, who had sensed Eldrinir's unease and come to him. His robes, dark as the twilight, whispered as they moved, and his eyes, ancient and wise, searched Eldrinir's face with an understanding that spoke of years upon years of sorrow and foresight. "You carry a burden, Eldrinir," Elrond said, his voice calm but carrying the weight of centuries. "A burden heavier than most would bear." Eldrinir met his gaze, the cold knowledge of the past haunting his thoughts. "I've seen what lies ahead, my lord, and it is darker than any of us have prepared for. Azrathar, the dark elf of the last alliance, his resurrection, is not just a return of an enemy. It is the reawakening of something much larger. His pact with Morgoth, it's been sealed in the very earth itself. His influence, it lingers." Elrond stepped forward, his eyes narrowing in thought. "The remnants of Morgoth's shadow are not so easily erased. Many believe that when Sauron fell, the last vestiges of that darkness were gone. But there are those who know better. Then we are too late," Eldrinir said, his voice tinged with despair. "This isn't merely a fight against a dark elf. Azrathar's return would bring about the destruction of everything we fought for." "No," Elrond replied, his tone steady, though there was a trace of sadness in his voice. "You are not too late, but you must understand, Eldrinir, that darkness never truly disappears. It hides, it waits, and when it is ready, it emerges again just as it has always done. What matters now is not how or when it returns, but what we do in the face of it." Eldrinir paused, the weight of his words pressing upon him. Elrond was right. This was not a time for despair. He could not let fear cloud his judgment, even as the specter of Azrathar's return loomed over him. He had seen what darkness could do, and he knew that the time had come for him to act. "What must I do?" Eldrinir asked, his voice resolute, though still laced with uncertainty. must know more, Eldrinir said urgently. I need to find the place where Azrather lies buried, the source of his power, the heart of the darkness that binds him. Only there will I find the truth. Elrond's gaze softened. The heart of the darkness lies in the ruins of Tall Amherth, deep within the misty mountains. But be warned, Eldrinir, it is a place steeped in shadow. Many have sought answers there, and few have returned. The city's walls are laden with ancient curses. Even the wisest of us know that some questions are better left unanswered. Eldrinir nodded, his heart steeled. Then I must go. If Azrather is to be stopped, I must understand the depth of his power, the true nature of the pact he made. The last alliance may have defeated him once, but it seems we did not finish what was begun. A long silence hung between them, the weight of both their thoughts pressing down upon the quiet of Rivendell. Finally, Elrond spoke again, his voice soft yet firm. May the valor guide you, Eldrinir. But remember this, there are dangers in the search for truth, and not all truths are meant to be found. With that, Eldrinir turned and walked toward the gates of Rivendell, his steps steady, though his heart was a storm of uncertainty. The journey ahead would be treacherous, and the darkness that had stirred in the east would not be easily quelled. But the past could no longer be ignored. It had risen to claim its place in the present. As he passed beneath the tall archways, Eldrinir's thoughts drifted to Azrather. The dark elf was not just an enemy. He was a symbol of something far more ancient, a reminder of the forces that had once ruled Middle-earth in terror. And as Eldrinir embarked on his journey to Tall Amherth, he could not escape the feeling that Azrather's shadow was growing, drawing ever closer. The reawakening of such darkness could spell the end for them all. But Eldrinir knew one thing. It was a fight he could not avoid. The silence of Rivendell faded behind him as the road ahead beckoned, a road that would lead him into the heart of ancient evil, where forgotten shadows still lingered, and the echoes of the past waited to be heard once more. The wind carried with it a faint scent of the coming storm. Eldrinir tightened his cloak, steadying himself for the trials that lay ahead. In the deep places of the world, the echoes of the ancient enemies stirred, and his quest to uncover the truth of Azrather's dark legacy had only just begun. The air in the underground crypt of Tall Amherth was thick with the scent of damp stone, its oppressive darkness only broken by the flickering light of Eldrinir's lantern. His heart pounded in his chest as his eyes scanned the ancient markings on the walls, symbols he had only heard whispered in forgotten legends. This place, deep beneath the crumbled ruins of the city, was more than just a tomb. It was a prison, a burial ground for those who had been lost to time, twisted by a curse that had long since seeped into the land. Beside him, Lurel moved with quiet grace, her presence a stark contrast to the grim atmosphere that clung to the tomb. Though her face remained impassive. Her eyes betrayed the weight of the knowledge she had gathered. She had, like Eldrinir, come seeking answers, though perhaps for different reasons. Eldrinir had known from the moment he met her that she was no ordinary scholar. There was something about her, something both alluring and dangerous, that set her apart. And now, as they descended deeper into the heart of the crypt, the truth of her own legacy seemed inescapably tied to Azrather, the dark elf whose name haunted there every step. What is this place, truly? Eldrinir's voice broke the silence as he examined the intricate carvings that lined the walls. They seemed to writhe and twist as though alive, reflecting a power older and darker than anything he had encountered before. I have seen nothing like it in all my years. Lurel's gaze lingered on the carvings, her lips parting in a quiet breath. This is Tall Amherth, the city of ashes, she replied softly, her voice carrying the weight of centuries. It was once the heart of Azrather's power. His followers were not just defeated, they were transformed, bound to the land itself, their souls twisted into something darker. This crypt is where they rest, though they are not truly gone. The curse of Azrather still lingers. Eldrinir frowned, his mind racing with the implications of her words. Transformed. How could such a thing be? Lurel turned to face him, her expression shifting from calm to something darker. When Azrather made his pact with Morgoth, he sought to bind his power to the very fabric of the land. His followers, the ones who chose to follow him into the darkness, were not simply defeated in battle, they were sacrificed. Their spirits were bound to the earth, corrupted by the very shadow they had embraced. They are no longer the elves they once were. Eldrinir's heart sank as the weight of the revelation hit him. He had known Azrather's power was great, but to learn that it had been tied to the very earth itself, bound to the land through a curse, was beyond his worst fears. It was as though the land itself had become a living testament to Azrather's malevolent will, a dark force that could never truly die. They are the land, Eldrinir murmured, the realization chilling him to the core. The earth itself bears their curse, and we walk upon it unaware. The very soil beneath our feet carries the stain of their corruption. Yes, Lurel replied, her voice heavy with sorrow, and their influence still seeps through the land. The shadow that grows in the east, the corruption that spreads through the forests and fields, it is their doing. Only by destroying the source of Azrather's power can the curse be lifted. Eldrinir felt the burden of their quest settle upon him more heavily than ever. He had known that they were seeking something powerful, something that could stop Azrather's return. But now the stakes had changed. They were no longer simply searching for a weapon or an artifact. They were seeking the means to undo the very fabric of a curse that had gripped Middle-earth for millennia. And where is this source? Eldrinir asked, his voice resolute despite the dread that coiled in his chest. Where can can we find the power that binds Azrathar's curse? Luril's eyes darkened. It lies in the mountains of shadow, deep in the heart of the darkness. There is an artifact, an ancient relic, created by Azrathar himself. It is the source of his power, the key to his curse. If we destroy it, we will break the hold that Azrathar's spirit has over this land. A shiver ran down Eldrinir's spine as the weight of her words sank in. The mountains of shadow were a place few had dared to enter, and fewer still had returned from. The very name of the mountains was enough to send chills through the hearts of even the bravest souls. The curse that bound Azrathar's followers was not something that could be undone easily. It was a force that had shaped the land itself, and Eldrinir feared that their journey into the mountains would bring them face to face with powers they were ill-prepared to confront. Luril stepped closer to him, her expression softening for the first time since they had entered the crypt. Eldrinir, she said quietly, I know the weight of this quest has burdened you. You fear the connection between your past and Azrathar's curse. But know this, you are not alone in this. We fight together, and together we will end the shadow that has haunted Middle-earth for far too long. Eldrinir met her gaze, the flickering light from his lantern casting long shadows across their faces. For a moment, he saw the flicker of something deeper in her eyes, a sadness, a burden she carried much like his own. It was then that he understood. She, too, was bound to this curse, tied to Azrathar's legacy in ways she had yet to reveal. But before he could speak, the sound of shuffling feet echoed through the crypt, drawing his attention. The air thickened with the oppressive weight of the darkness that seemed to press in from all sides. Eldrinir's grip tightened on the hilt of his sword as he prepared for whatever was to come next. The crypt was not empty. Something stirred within the shadows. Luril moved to stand beside him, her hand reaching for the dagger at her waist. We are not alone, she said, her voice low and tense. The cursed followers of Azrathar are restless. We must leave this place, Eldrinir, and quickly. Eldrinir nodded grimly, his mind racing. They had uncovered a terrible secret, but the true danger lay ahead. The mountains awaited, and with them, the source of Azrathar's power. It was there that they would face the culmination of their quest, a battle not only for the future of Middle-earth, but for their very souls. As they turned and made their way back toward the entrance, the sounds of shuffling grew louder, more insistent. The curse was waking, and time was running out.